Hello and welcome back. In this module, we will explore the concept of unrestricted resource consumption vulnerability in our APIs and its impact on API security. Now, what is unrestricted resource consumption vulnerability? So this is an API vulnerability that occurs when an attacker can abuse the resources of an API to consume excessive system resources and impact the availability and performance of the API. And the underlying system on which the API is running. Now, this vulnerability often allows an attacker to cause denial of service or distributed denial of service, also known as DOS and DDoS, attack on the targeted API. This arises when an API does not enforce appropriate limits or quotas on resource usage by individual API requests or by client accounts. And as a result, an attacker can craft requests that are designed to consume a disproportionate amount of consumptional resources, such as CPU cycles, memory, or network bandwidth. Now, these resource-intensive requests can overwhelm the targeted API and exhaust its resources, leading to degraded performance, unavailability, or even complete system crashes. Now, some of the examples of unrestricted resource consumption are like large payload attacks. So in this one, the attacker can send API requests with unusually large payloads, forcing the API server to spend excessive amount of time and resources to process them. For example, attacker might send large files, images, or videos as part of their request. An attacker can also trigger expensive operations. So some APIs operations can be computationally expensive, such as heavy database queries or complex data manipulations. Attackers can exploit this by crafting requests that trigger such operations repeatedly on your system or with complex inputs, leading to excessive resource consumption. So for example, attackers can run heavy database queries on your system repeatedly until the database goes down, causing a crash of your application. There could be attacks which include infinite loops. So APIs that rely on iterative processes or loops are vulnerable to attacks, where an attacker can force the API into an infinite loop. Now, by submitting such repeated requests or providing specific inputs, an attacker can cause the API to continuously run in loop without termination, again consuming system resources and leading to a denial of service condition at some point. Now, there are other attacks too, like regular expression denial of service or DDoS, that we are going to see as an example in our application. And there are amplification attacks. In some cases, an API may have features that allow it to request data from external sources or dependencies, and attackers can abuse these features by manipulating the requests to solicit responses that are significantly larger in size than the original request, again causing resource exhaustion on the API server and affecting availability. In the next lecture, we will see an example of regular expression denial of service attack or DDoS attack in our sample application. And we are going to focus on the GET API, where we are getting the user by username. That's all for this one, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.